views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, it's nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz, BronxNet's program where we talk to journalists and writers and photographers and filmmakers and videographers and anybody who puts something out in the borough of the Bronx. And this evening I am really thrilled because we're going to talk about maybe my favorite subject in the world, and aside from the Bronx, and that is the subject of baseball. And I will tell you, my longtime friend Howie Karpin, I was just chatting with him before the show. We could have the same conversation if we were standing in the schoolyard, because he and I have been talking about baseball together for a long time. I feel like with everything going on with the Hall of Fame and with the cheating scandal and the new Mets manager, that I need a little check-in with my therapist, and I'm going to use my baseball therapist, Howie Karpin, to sort it all out for us. So let's spend the evening now with Howie Karpin, my good buddy. Nice to have you with us, Mr. Karpin.
Yeah, I'll try and talk you off the ledge.
No, I'm okay. Everything's all right. We should mention, for folks who don't know, Howie's a Bronx guy for his entire life, like me, columnist on New York Sports Day. And also, he's about to start his 22nd season as one of New York's official scorers in Major League Baseball. Howie, before we even start particulars, we love the game of baseball, right? It's still America's pastime and still a great game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you still pitch, you still try and hit, you still try and catch the ball, you still try and score runs and make plays if you need to, and try and win the World Series. It all goes back to the basics. No matter how much they try and tweak it and come up with all these new formulas for analyzing it, it's still the same game. And
the way to win it is not on your stat page, but of course playing the game right. All right, listen, a guy who played the game right, a guy who is an undeniable Hall of Famer. Now, of course, he's been elected to the Hall of Fame. 5 world championships. You could just list the accolades. Derek Jeter, now a Hall of Famer. You interacted with him personally. You watched him play for all those years while you were an official scorer. Is there anything left to say about Derek Jeter and his induction into the Hall of Fame?
Well, since you give me the forum, I'll say this: I'm very stunned at the public perception of his defensive skills. Look, he played 20 years. He was going to decline in the last 3-4 years. But there were people out there. Now, look, everyone's a genius when it comes to baseball. We all know the sport, right?
Sure.
But there are people who are dissing his whole career that he was one of the worst defenders at shortstop. I mean, did you watch the games?
Yeah.
Come on.
He won 5 Gold Gloves, right?
Ever on he was one of the best ever on pop-ups, which is a skill in itself. Yeah, he lost range at the end. But you know how I answer that? I say to people, go ask the pitchers he played with. If he didn't make them feel comfortable on the mound, that they're going to win the game with him at short. They come up with, I think a lot of people are pointing to these defensive metrics, Gary, which are poison to analyzing the game. I'm telling you, they're awful. Lorenzo Cain won a Gold Glove this year. 2 years ago, his defensive metrics said he was a subpar center fielder on the way down. They moved him to right field in Kansas City. He went to Milwaukee. He's playing center field at a Gold Glove level. So, I mean, to believe this defensive stuff about the guy. I mean, you watch the guy play. He's a Hall of Famer, and that's the bottom line.
The bottom line, I heard a anecdote from, I don't even remember who it was, one of his former teammates. And they said after every at-bat, even if, let's say, he struck out and he came back to the dugout, and players, of course, would ask him, what has the pitcher got? What is he throwing? Because they wanted to know what he saw. And they said every single time, doesn't matter whether he got a hit, a home run, or struck out, he'd come back to the dugout and he'd look at them and he'd go, he's got nothing. He's got nothing. And my reason for bringing that up is because that's what a leader does. It says creates an attitude on a team that it's about us and not them. And obviously, 5 world championships. I mean, he was the captain, as great a figure in the game of baseball as maybe ever been.
You know, as time goes by, I mean, you know, whether you like the Yankees or not or whatever, you know, personal preferences are. The bottom line is the team he was on is going to take on more significance in history because of the difficulty it has been in the last 20 years to repeat as a world champion.
That's right.
There hasn't been a repeat champion since that Yankee team that won the 3 in a row. We're talking about 20 years now. So the fact that you know, he was on that team, and then a number of people say Rivera was the real MVP. Well, without Jeter and the rest of the team, Rivera doesn't get in a position to make those saves. So it all goes hand in hand to say one guy is more valuable than the other. But in the world of baseball, the everyday player has to be measured a little more than even a great closer or a great pitcher. You know, that guy's in there every day. He's helping other pitchers with their games. So, you know, the value of his leadership, I think, has kind of been pushed under the rug a little bit, overwhelmed by these opinions of his defense.
Well, you know, he, again, I basically articulated it. He set a tone for that team, and a lot of that tone about, you know, taking advantage of opportunities, that's what characterized that team. You made an error in a tight game, in a playoff game against the Yankees, or you didn't get something done that you should have gotten done, they would have killed you. That's why they won, and he was at the core of that attitude. I don't have any doubt about that. Howie, just, I don't even know if we want to belabor it. The one voter who didn't vote for him, I mean, it must be somebody with a grudge of some sort, because there's no rational argument for thinking that he should not be a Hall of Famer.
Well, yesterday I wrote in my column before the vote was released that the headline was Jeter unanimous with a question mark. Jeter unanimous, maybe not. Yeah, you know, as you said, I interacted with him. I covered him his whole career. You know, I started scoring his 4th year in, so I scored a lot of his games over the years. You know, and saw different sides of him. You know, but obviously you spoke about the leadership and stuff, but I think the perception that I got sometimes from the national media when I was scoring games, I'll give you an example. And I like to say I didn't score the game when he had the 3,000th hit. My colleague Jordan Spreckman had that honor. But I scored hit for 2987, which caused a lot of controversy because it was like an in-between scoring call. You know, and I gave Jeter the benefit of the doubt because that's what you do as scorers. When a guy busts it down the line and forces the defense to react quickly,
right,
you have to give the hitter sometimes the benefit of the doubt, and that's the kind of play it was. And then Bob Raceman, actually, from the New York Daily News, called me, not about that game. It just happened to be the timing was the next day, and he was doing a story on how the scorers were handling, you know, the pursuit of 3,000. You know, obviously there was a little pressure on us at that time because everyone wanted to see him do it at home. So I was scoring a game about a month before he did it. He got hurt in the interim after that, and then he missed some time. And I called that a hit, and then Raceman had a quote the next day from obviously an anonymous press box occupant who said, with the scoring like this, he'll get 4,000 on this homestand. So that's the kind of they thought the national media had this perception that we favored him, even on defense. So, which was totally untrue, and it bothered me because it wasn't true, and they used to flaunt this opinion that we were favoring him, so he would get the 3,000 at home, which totally wasn't true. But that's why I had an inkling that he may not be unanimous, and I wrote about it in that column yesterday.
You know, I don't want to belabor it. We have other things we definitely want to get to. As you know, was in the locker room a number of times, covered the Yankees and the Mets and other teams as they came in. He wasn't the friendliest guy to the media. He, you know, kept his distance, and so to me, that unless there's a real problem, like Dave Kingman insulting women reporters or something, which of course there never was with Jeter, it should not affect voting for the Hall of Fame. That's a totally separate thing. But to be honest, I mean, he wasn't the friendliest guy to the media in that locker room.
Well, since you went into that, he did have like kind of a dark side, I put in quotations. If you got on his bad side, you didn't get a second chance. You got one strike.
That's right.
With him.
Yeah.
And he was very guarded. Yeah, you're right. He was very guarded in the comments. If you notice, he always came out dressed, which was his prerogative. He never dressed in front of anybody. That's his prerogative. But other guys do. That's their choice. But, I think it annoyed some of the media guys who wanted more. But you knew what you were getting with him. I mean, that's what he was. He was bland in his comments. Now you got to realize, too, his upbringing. This is a kid who had mixed parents, probably took a lot of crap when he was young, in a society that wasn't as accepting as it is today, even though there's still a long way to go. So who knows? Maybe that's why he developed this guarded persona.
Let's take our break now, and we'll get Howie Karpin right back in just a moment or two. The Bronx Buzz with Howie Karpin. We got baseball this evening. Don't go away.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self. And I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry. Go long, son.
it's always worth it.
Whoa, master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, it's Ava, and this is Tess from Vivo's Do It Yourselfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old t-shirt.
It's not garbage, it's actually a brand new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
You think getting dumped by text is harsh? Try getting dumped by a tennis ball. My ex-owner drove me out to the woods, yelled fetch, and by the time I brought the ball back, he was gone. Yeah, I was pissed. But the folks at the shelter helped me let go of my anger. I learned coping skills, like taking it to the hole. Boom! Now I'm ready to fetch again. But how about I throw and you run and get it?
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. We're talking with Howie Karpin. The subject is baseball. The season doesn't even start till March. Spring training doesn't even start till February, but we're right in the thick of it. Howie, let's move on from Derek Jeter and talk about the other Hall of Fame inductee. I liked Larry Walker as a player, and I'm glad he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Your thoughts?
All right. Well, I disagree with you. I wasn't. No, not a knock on his career. You have to use that disclaimer all the time. But I just don't think he measured up to the Hall of Fame. His splits are extreme. I don't want to hold the Coors thing against him, but he can't argue with those kind of numbers. He's 70 points higher batting average, 70 points higher on base and slugging, difference home and road. So, he stayed around a long time, 17 years, and only played 1,900 games. He missed a lot of games. So that's why I have my qualms with him being a Hall of Fame worthy.
Oh, he was, in my mind, the first really great player for Colorado. And I understand what you're saying, but maybe there's something to be said for that. Much like they inducted Gary Carter with the Montreal Expos hat to make sure there were more in there. I think it's, there's something to that. Although I'm not going to disagree with you. You are, you're making a good point. And, when I look at guys like Harold Baines, I never thought, even considered that he was a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Everyone's measuring other guys up to that. Dave Parker was a better player than Larry Walker. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Good
and
point.
then you have this WAR stat that says Walker did better than Dave Winfield. Was he better than Dave Winfield? I don't know about that. So, it's definitely subjective, and that's what it's come to nowadays.
Yep. Jeff Kent, do you think Jeff Kent, I saw a graph that showed that Kent had better offensive numbers than a number of second basemen, Ryan Sandberg.
Yeah, well, my point with Kent is two things. Obviously, that Barry Bonds batted behind him a number of years, which gave him an awful lot of protection. And they like to talk about his numbers as a second baseman, but he couldn't make it in any other position. They tried him at third, they tried him at first, they tried him in the outfield. He was not a good defender. Yeah, he won an MVP one year, so did a lot of guys. Dale Murphy won back-to-back. He's not in the Hall of Fame. I know he's marginal. I know he's close. Another guy, I'm a small hall guy. I'm a tough marker. He doesn't fit my qualifications.
He also was a surly sort of character, and I don't know that that's going to help him. Howie, you put out an article in New York Sports Day, one of your columns, and as you know, as I communicated with you, that I absolutely loved it. The whole notion that Major League Baseball has kind of given itself to this idea of stats and new technology. I personally don't like the instant replay. Maybe it could be used in some circumstances, but that whole interaction with umpires, the personality of the game. You're gonna win as many as you're gonna lose. Let's put it that way. And then you related that, as well as the expansion of statistics and all the other technology, to, well, you wanted technology? Look what the players think of technology, and they cheated their way potentially into a World Series. We're talking about the Astros. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I've always had a problem with the way they're trying to quantify the sport. 3 for 10 as a basketball player, that's not good from the field. 3 for 10 as a NFL quarterback is not good. 3 for 10 in baseball is good. The numbers are not always logical, but they're trying to place logic, and take away from the human element in the game. The baseball's a game of imperfections, and you're trying to quantify everything. It doesn't work. Players now, they look at that box that you see on TV with the strike zone. That's causing a problem in itself. Players get called out. They go back into the video room, whatever, see that maybe the ball didn't go on in the box or it not touch the box, and then they complain about the umpiring and makes the umpires look bad. Now you've taken away also the spontaneity of things. At the end, as you've talked about, at the end of a game, you have to look at something. Oh, this team wins the World Series. Wait, we got to look at replay to see that they win the World Series. It's taken away the spontaneity. It's really, invasive right now.
And so then what's the relationship that you drew between those kinds of things to the cheating scandal? My sense was and I think you even articulated it, you wanted technology? you got technology, and now it worked against the game of baseball.
Yeah, it's almost in a way similar to the steroid scandal. You know, everyone started using the steroids. Well, look what happened. You had people cheating the sport and then ruining their bodies down the road, things like that. You know, the collateral damage, so to speak, from technology coming into the game, as I mentioned before, I mean, you're taking away the spontaneity. Games are longer now because of all these replays. You're measuring little millimeter distances because the guy's not touching the base or he comes off for a second. You know, they've changed the rules. You can't, no collisions at the plate. You can't take a guy out at second on the double play. So, I mean, you're taking a lot of things out of the game, and technology isn't really enhancing it that much. You're throwing these statistics that are kind of also devaluing players, not really evaluating them the proper way.
Carlos Beltran was seen by many as really an embodiment of a lot of what was good in baseball, and that he ran his own RBI charity, which was a wonderful thing, and it still is a wonderful thing and a genuine thing. Family man, and the players respected him. But basically, all of that is gone now. I mean, I don't think he'll ever get into the Hall of Fame. His reputation is gone. His dream job of managing a New York baseball team is gone. One of the really sad collateral damages in this, I think.
Yeah, I believe, you know, he's an astute baseball man. I believe that he spotted things from the field without the use of technology, just by using his instinct and his eyes, which you can do. I mean, I used to steal signs when I was playing ball, like for Lehman College and in the sandlots, because I followed patterns. But, you know, I wasn't using technology. I think Carlos Beltran then took it another step further and got his hand caught in the cookie jar, so to speak. He won't go in the Hall of Fame. And then, you know, he's the only player that was named. A number of people want other players punished. I think they're going to be punished in the court of public opinion, because they have to play now in front of their peers, and especially on the road. They're going to go through a lot of ridicule this season. They come into New York in late September. They play the Yankees first at their place and then come in here in September. So before that, they're going to see a lot of ridicule on the road and a lot of stuff they're going to have to deal with.
2 rule changes, and you, of course, as one of the official scorers of Major League Baseball, are going to have to wrestle with them. 26-man roster, how do you look at it? Time has come, necessary, unnecessary? What do you think?
Necessary, because of the scheduling and the way that the pressure put on the players to play a night game on a Sunday night and then fly to another city and play on Monday afternoon, things like that. I'd like to see a third catcher used for that 26th spot, especially in the National League where you have to pinch hit. I think there's a 13-pitcher limit on the rosters. That's all you can go. You can't go crazy. Thankfully, they did that. But it's good, you know, it makes for another job. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the doubleheaders. Last year, they when you had an unscheduled doubleheader, you could add a 26th man. Well, they add a 27th man in that case. That hasn't been addressed. Yeah, and then the 3-batter minimum rule coming in as well.
I was just going to ask you about that. Now, how does it work? So, if you come in the middle of an inning, do you have to then pitch into the beginning of the next inning, which would certainly strap the offense if it's a National League team and they wanted a pinch hit for a pitcher? How does that whole 3-man thing work?
Well, that's basically the rule.
Yeah, 3-man. That's right. 3-man.
3-batter minimum. Yeah, right. Basically the rules being put in to eliminate a guy starting an inning, facing one batter, and then taking out the guy, and a delay of bringing in another guy. That's the reason why basically, if you start an inning, you're going to have to pitch to 3 guys, no matter what. Now, that's going to be trouble in itself. But if you come in the middle of an inning and there's already an out, you only have to get the next 2 outs. You don't have to pitch into the next inning and face another batter.
Well,
once your inning ends, your stint can end.
Okay, so let's say that you come in, there's 1 out, and you come into the game, and 2 guys get a hit. They can't take you out till you face that 3rd batter.
Right.
Well, what do you think that does? Is that ease the stress on some bullpens because you're not going to have to get guys up all the time? Maybe emphasize, frankly, I look at the Mets, you emphasize teams with, the Mets have 3 good long guys potentially, Michael Wacha, Gesellman, and Lugo. Those teams may do better than teams with, 1-inning guys. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's going to make the spot reliever kind of extinct. That one guy, that lefty specialist, is not going to. Yeah, he's going to have to face more guys. Guys are going to have to be groomed to face, righties and lefties now in the minor leagues. You're going to eliminate that spot reliever, and I think it's going to be more. It's going to take some pressure off the bullpens. You won't have to carry. You may have to carry still the same amount of guys. The depth will be the same, but the pressure's more on the managers. They have to look down. When they start a guy with an inning, they have to look at who's coming up 3-4 batters down the road. Imagine you bring a guy in, starts the inning, and 3 guys get on. You can't take him out until that third guy is up. Well, the fans will be going crazy.
Yeah.
Imagine if you bring in Lugo and he has a bad outing, 2 guys get on, he walks the next guy. You couldn't take him out until after he walked that third batter he faced.
I guess it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Mets chose Luis Rojas. I like the pick. I like his pedigree as being a descendant of the wonderful, respectable, tremendous Alou family, Felipe, Jesus, and Matty Alou, who was as great a hitter as you're ever going to find. I thought the Mets, all things considered, made a good choice.
I'm with you. I'm warming up to the idea. I like the fact the players like him. He knows the players. He's been around the organization. For me, it's the in-game decision making. And there was a quote now from Brody Van Wagenen that says Luis Rojas was one of the best in-game decision making people in their organization. So if that translates to the dugout, maybe they luck out here in the long run and end up with a decent manager who could hopefully lead them down the road. I like the way that they're thinking long term instead of just bringing in a guy for a short term fix, although that wouldn't have been bad either. But if they're thinking long term here, they only gave him a 2-year deal. He's obviously on trial, so to speak. We'll see what he does during the games, and that's going to tell the tale.
Howie, last point with the Red Sox and Astros without a manager even at this point. Do you think it leaves clear sailing for the Yankees to be the favorites in the AL East and, of course, in the American League?
Yes and yes, partly because the league is weak overall. That's why the win totals have been so high for certain teams. And it hasn't really gotten a lot better, although the White Sox are starting to come up a little bit. But I think there's flaws there for the Yankees that they have to address. Their balance offensively. They have one left-hand hitter right now, Brett Gardner. And I think they got to be a little worried about the defense from Sanchez behind the plate, especially with a new pitcher like Garrett Cole. You want to make him feel comfortable. I'm surprised they let Austin Romine walk. He was a perfect fit for that role, backup. Right. And he didn't take a lot of money from the Tigers.
Howie, you and I have proven that we can talk baseball as long as they need us to talk. So we thank you for your time, and you belong in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. You made me feel better today because I got to talk about baseball in the dead of winter, and so we appreciate your time.
You got me anytime, and you bring out the best in me. Thanks.
We'll see you around. All right, folks, that pretty much does it for the Bronx Buzz. And I guess we'll just see you next week, right? See you Monday night for Bronx Talk. We'll talk about the census on Bronx Talk Monday night. Good night.